Hey guys, it's Candace Hills, the host of the Holy Business Podcast, and we're so excited you've joined this week. This week, I sit down with John Kisner, the CEO of Owners Incorporated, to talk about the story of the business and how it began to where it is now, the struggles of leadership, and so many other things. What we learned is that we both can run our mouths, so this episode is going to be split into two parts, one this week and one next, and I hope you get as much out of the conversation as I did. Thanks for listening.
So my name is Jonathan Kisner. My social security number. All right, so what's up? So you've been dogging to get me here.
I know.
How many months? And you've only been doing this for weeks.
3 years. Okay, so you're John Kisner.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Yes. Some days it's good, some days it's bad.
We don't give out your coordinates because
pay,
people will be in the driveway.
Week, so it's not a good week to be John Kisner.
Well, if John Kisner is your boss, it's a good week.
Correct.
Because you
if
love
you're on
him.
the other side of that, yeah. Wait, what did you just say? Okay, I just wanted to reiterate that.
I'm a contractor.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it doesn't count in that category.
No.
Okay.
All right. So what do you own, John?
A Ford Bronco.
Okay.
A house. Actually, the bank owns the house.
Well, I was like, what owns you?
Stacy,
Yes.
my wife,
She should.
my kids. So we own Owners Incorporated. So we actually have been doing this. I think in February it comes up to 7 years.
Dang.
Yeah. So it's a holy number. So
I was
we're
like,
looking.
year of Jubilee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 24 will be hopefully a better year than the rest of the other ones. But every year it's gotten better. So we own Owners Incorporated. It's a business that encompasses anything around a home or residence, as far as landscape, pool maintenance, renovation, turnkey type stuff. We do anything from light bulbs all the way up to renovate whole homes if we need to.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we also build pools. So we build custom pools too. So pretty much anything. It's a one call, one stop type ordeal.
So you're an owner, but you've gone through some structuring now.
Right. I own Owners as an owner. It's not confusing at all.
So what's interesting though is you've structured your team that even you and your partner have taken seats on the bus essentially. Like, what is your role now?
So my role has changed drastically from the beginning. So in the beginning, I was the one physically going out and doing all the pool maintenance, because that's the first business that we created, was Palmetto Pool Doctors. And so me and my business partner, John Basil, actually would actually be the ones to go out and do all the stuff. So we wore multiple hats at that point. Over the past year and a half, my job has changed drastically into a CEO position or more of a visionary position, which has kind of been a struggle, to be honest. It hasn't been an easy one because I am a doer. I do like to be really super involved in the day-to-day, the fixing the immediate fire type stuff.
Yeah.
And the position that I'm taking literally brings me out of that to where I have to visionary see past those things day to day, but cast vision for everybody that's in the organization. So it's been it still is. It's still kind of a newness, but you're helping me with that.
Yeah, we're doing that together.
Yeah, I call you the scissors. You're the one that's scissoring me and cutting me out of the whole ordeal. So I just kind of get to put in my 2 cents when it's needed, I guess, is the best way to put it.
I would say you have more than 2 cents on.
I know that's just kind of how I look at it. So
I don't think there's a CEO of a growing company that has only 2 cents to offer ever, really.
Well, I'm very humble. It's probably more like $1.50 that I had. But 2 cents is what I'm going to say on here.
2 cents it is.
Yeah.
So so in the past year and a half, you've really evolved in that role.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I really strived for, too. Like, I saw myself in that position 6.5 years ago. But it's something that once you kind of go through the whole process and go through the baptism by fire, it's you're learning every time you step into the new role. So I've gone from pool tech to business consultant to sales to finance. We're trying to hone in on our finance department right now to make it better with all the money and everything that passes through. It's become a lot, so we've really focused in on that. And then on top of that, you also have to be the visionary and the minister to your employees. So you have to be the word of encouragement or the word of discipline sometimes to people. And so all that's wrapped up in that one position. Even though it feels like I'm not doing a whole lot, you're doing a whole lot.
It's more cerebral now.
Yeah. So because I'm physically not doing anything, it's like,
Can you say the word cerebral?
I can't even, no. What is that? What is that? I don't even know what that means.
It's up here.
Okay.
Your brain.
All right. Yeah.
You said something interesting. You said you're the visionary and the minister, and I don't know that every CEO sees that in their leadership position. I know if I can share the past year, some of the pain points.
I'm not sure you want to. It's probably not good if you do, though.
One thing that happened a lot early on was you figuring out, who do I give feedback to and who do I not, and who am I just like the white hat cheerleader for,
right?
And what does that look like? And sitting here to hear you say, I'm a visionary, I'm a minister.
Yeah.
How does that transition? Like, that's not easy when you're seeing something you want to address and all of a sudden you might not be the guy to address it.
Well, I've been blessed with people like you to come in and for people like Basil and those people, to where I can be the visionary. I can also see what's coming ahead, or who needs to have discipline, or who needs to have something spoken into them, and I can direct that through those channels.
That's good.
But before, it is a fine game of, you have to. It sounds really cheap the way I'm about to say it, but you have to keep people motivated. But you also have to give them a vision of why they need to be motivated to go. It's not a manipulative type thing. It's more of a, I see this in you and I want you to be able to go here and do this.
Sure.
But a lot of times you get a lot of pushback in that position from employees and different things like that, because they don't see that, or there's something else is going wrong in their life. So at Owners, we really try to focus on faith, family, then business. And so we know if the first two are right, the business side just automatically happens.
Yeah.
And so it's been a struggle. It sounds very cliche and very like, yeah, okay, that's what everybody wants in life is great faith, great family, and then they want to have a great job or whatever that they make good money at. But it's something that we really strive for. I would rather hear somebody say, I love working here, than, hey, I made $500 today, or whatever it would be. And so, so that's really our main drive, but it is a struggle in a higher position to be able to discipline, but also encourage at the same time. I think that's what God calls us to do too.
For sure.
He really, he wants the best for us, but he also wants to where he doesn't want you to do things you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And so he disciplines us in those manners also. So it's a fun position, but it's a very stressful, heavy burden position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because I always think about Peter with that. Like, there are multiple times in Scripture where Jesus has to, like, give Peter the hard correction.
Right.
And then he's like, I'm going to build my church on you.
Yeah. That's right.
Forget that part.
Right. Yeah, he sees that way before. I mean, he sees everything that we're going to incur happen way before we even do it. So, and that's one of the things I tell our team all the time is, don't focus on everybody around you or what they're doing. Focus on what God will have you do. And so if you do that, God's already appointed your path. He already knows your heart. He already knows what you want. Why not just follow that? And I was watching a movie this week, and one of the things, the guy was driving down the road, and on the side of a billboard it said, comparison is the thief of joy. And I was like, wow. I was like, that really hit me pretty hard, because we do that all the time. With like Facebook and different things and social media, or as a business owner, we look like, hey, what are they doing? They just got ahead by doing this. Let's try that, or let's put a twist on what that would be.
Sure.
And so when we started, we were doing that a lot, and we were like, well, how do we become them, or how do we become? And that's not what God calls us. God calls us to become ourselves, and that's what makes us unique in our testimony and our path to be able to go do the things that we do in business.
Is that why you're so evolved and have no social media?
Correct. That, and because comparison is the thief of joy. Yeah. And I'm a 90-year-old man trapped in a very young 40-year-old body. Thank you. But I am old school. So when Facebook came out, I have a Facebook because Stacy made me a Facebook. But I always said, and this is the most oldest thing I've ever said, is it's the hand of the devil, is Facebook. Because I didn't know how to handle it. I probably still don't know how to handle it in the aspect of you always compare yourself. Like, hey, they're on vacation. Why haven't I taken a vacation?
Sure.
Or they got a new car. Why don't I have a new car?
Yeah.
And it's always that surface deep stuff. And I would always get caught in that. Like when Stacy looks at stuff and then I'm like, oh, just turn it off. I don't want to see it. I don't want to talk about it. And so yeah, I'm a 90-year-old man when it comes to social media.
I didn't even know you had a Facebook, but now I want to troll you really
and there's
hard.
there's probably like only pictures from 2008 on there when I didn't have a beard and like, yeah.
I was just thinking like my afternoon might be rude comments on your Facebook.
And I would never see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so just fun to hang out there.
You can go at that all you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun. Because I will never see those. So, nor do I care.
Nope. I don't think I'm going to spend hours going through your Facebook. That sounds real creepy. All right. You said about a year and a half ago, you made this turn where you're like, I need I need to have more structure than being an owner. So one thing, looking at the past year that we've been working together on some things, your growth was just kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And what were some pain points that kind of helped you see, I need to do something differently?
Yeah, I mean, to go off the growth that we did, my mentality when we started the business was go get everything we can and we'll figure it out afterwards. And we did that for about 3.5 to 4 years, and it was exponential growth. I mean, it was stupid growth. And it was to the point where the growth distracted us from how to be a great business.
Oh.
So every time we would gain 50 new customers or whatever it would be, or a big contract or whatever, we would focus on that and how to make that happen, opposed to slowing it down a little bit and saying, how do we make our service great? We started out with a great service, and that's why we gained all that. But we grew at such capacity that we lost that at some level, to where it was really a difficult time for us. And so we really struggled with that. So now my mentality is, now that I'm more out of the trenches and more looking at the everybody wants to be big, right?
Right.
Like everybody's like, if I got to make $1 million, I got to be the biggest guy in town. And it's like, that's not true. That's not true at all. And so when I was 25 years old, I'm like, that's going to be me. I'm going to have 100 employees and we're going to be the biggest thing in town and everything else. And so the older I got and the more I went through, I call it the ringer, I guess, going through the whole baptism by fire, it showed me that you don't have to be the biggest to be the best. So you can actually, so what we actually did, it's almost like we blew up so big that we realized this is pointless, because the growth caused us distraction, and the distraction cost us money. And so we were at a big capacity. I mean, we still are. We were a big entity. We had a lot of employees. We had a lot of money coming in every month. We were winning different contracts. We were gaining customers left and right. And it got to the point where I just stopped and looked at it, and I'm like, we're not making any more money, and we're not doing anything more beneficial for our employees other than causing stress for our employees. And then on top of that, we're doing an injustice to the customer, because we're not fulfilling what they need, because we're focused on the next 10 that are coming in the door.
Oh, that's good.
And so we have slowed that down. And so in the next year, in 2024, our plan is we want to grow, but we don't want to grow so exponentially. It's process procedure that we focused on this past year in 23. We want to focus now to implement that and polish the diamond through 24. So we don't want to get any more land. We don't want to plant any more crops on more acreage. We just want to make ours better, is what we want to do. And so we're trying to do that, but you don't have to be big to be the best. And so I actually was meeting with a guy that did the same stuff, kind of what we did.
Yeah.
And he grew, and he had 25 employees or whatever. And he was saying, I was like, man, how'd that turn out? He goes, it was a nightmare. He said, I quit, got rid of everybody. And he said, now it's just me and 5 guys, and we go do pools, and that's what we do. And he said, the reason why I did that was because it was such a headache. But he said, I make as much money with the 5 guys as I did with the 25. And it hit me in the head like, well, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
And it's not that we're letting anybody go or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's we want to invest in the people we have because we've got great people. But we also don't want to cause them stress. We want to make sure that they're here and they're enjoying what they do. And that's the biggest lesson I think that I've learned. But it's also an identity crisis too. I think we identify with our businesses more than as our identity more than we do with God or with what we're actually supposed to do.
Well, and that goes right back to the priorities you talked about.
Right.
If that's the first one. Then
Right. And we're all flesh.
Yeah.
So I struggle with it all the time. And a lot of business owners struggle with it too, to where you walk into a room and your identity is your business. And the first thing that somebody comes up to you is like, oh man, this is John and he owns blah, 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 blah. What's the first thing you asked me when I came on here? Hey, what do you own?
What do you do?
Yeah, what do you own? What do you do? And so I make it a point when I meet somebody, like at a party or whatever, to not ask them what they do. If they bring it up, they'll bring it up.
Same.
But it's more, I want to know the relationship, their character, everything else before I get into, because that should be second in the identity of how we meet people and how we create relationships. If you do it, if you're meeting people just on the sole fact of what do you do, and then everything else follows, you're looking for an opportunity to sell or do something or to get up or to do that kind of thing. It's in your head, even though you might not think that way. You're doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's definitely, gosh, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
I feel like can we take a break? Can we take like a 20-minute break now?
Absolutely not.
I'm like the coffee's kicking in.
We only drink by fire hoses.
Yeah, 100%.
Especially in our meetings.
Right. So I want to ask you a question. Why did you want to do this podcast? Not with me.
I actually.
But like what spawned you to be able to do all this?
I didn't want to do this podcast.
I didn't either.
So, okay, like 7 years ago, I had been leading small groups, and I kept collecting people like me who had been owners or were owners, and they not obsess about but these were people with healthy, I think, relationships with their work and their business. And I had been through a lot of God killing that workaholic in me to come to a healthy place. But there was still a piece of me that was always thinking and turning it over in my head. And I would meet in small group with people like that.
Yeah.
And the whole rest of the world was kind of defining it and categorizing them as workaholics or obsessed. But really it was, this is how my brain works.
Right.
And
it's very unique how your brain works. That's a compliment.
Ask my husband. But J.D. Greer in Faith Driven Entrepreneur said something when we were starting the group at Freedom. In the very first video, they talked about being called to create. And that is, I think sometimes we misidentify owners and entrepreneurs as not creative. When really that's how they create. It's whatever their craft is. They're really into it, but they're into how do I make it a system and how do I build it and that kind of thing.
Right.
And you and I have talked a lot about there are artists and then there are people who systematize things and build business.
Yes, a lot. We've talked about that. I didn't understand any of that until you came on.
Yeah. So,
I didn't realize any of that dynamic of people.
Yeah.
And be able to recognize that until you brought that to light. So
and we've
that was another compliment. Can we keep track of the compliments?
I don't know what to do with those, so I just move on through. I don't know what to do with positive feedback. But so in that, I wanted to toss around these ideas. And as I grew in my faith, went through ordination, it just kept coming up that, I don't know about you, but I think there's a large generation that was raised with this kind of separation of church and state mentality of we believe in Jesus, but we don't know how to talk about him.
Right.
And there was a lot in my corporate training that said you don't talk about him. But we can actually walk out our faith really openly without it being oppressive to the people around us.
Right.
And God can use our businesses to do more.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I always look at is I have largely seen service opportunities and evangelistic opportunities with those who are impoverished or those who are at educational deficits. But what are we doing to evangelize the people that could feed thousands of widows and orphans,
Right.
that could build the schools, that
Right.
could provide family care, that could mentor fathers who don't know how to do it, or kids at, we've been talking about Berkeley Alternative, the kids there who don't have family units that are secure.
Right.
When we're doing it in our own homes and we're building businesses and we're blessing our employees, what could we also teach them that becomes a light to the world through
Right.
what we do, through the work of our hands?
Yeah.
And so that's where this came around. So I started this because I said no, because there was millions of podcasts in my mind and everybody's talking about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I had 4 or 5 people say that absolutely should be a yes.
Yeah.
And so finally I just said, God, I'm going to do it. I don't know what it looks like, but I do think there's a gap in the way we minister to people of affluence and influence.
Yeah.
And we should be sharing our stories of success and hardship to make each other better. This is iron sharpening iron.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's super important to drive that home, because we had that conversation,
Yeah.
2 years ago?
Yeah. In your driveway.
In the driveway, yeah. And it was like one of those God moments where it was like, I was thinking the same thing for a year or two, and you were thinking, and then the ideas met.
Yeah.
And so to see it come to fruition, to do a podcast and to kind of push that narrative now, and the entrepreneurial group that you put together, and per month, and it's really encouraging to watch that growth happen. But it's also, I can't wait to see the testimony that comes out of that as we watch it grow and reach more and more and more people. So I think it's super important to do this kind of stuff, even though I have high anxiety about doing this kind of stuff, which I want to be open about. But it's very important to be able to push that.
For
because
sure.
a lot of people won't do that. I was in Tennessee last week, and we were with a business owner. He's got probably 20 employees, and it was the coolest thing. It gives me chills. We just met him, and he was tiptoeing around. He was showing us some stuff around, and we're like, man, how did you come about this? And he goes, and you could tell him he hesitated a little bit, and then he said, God's just blessed me. And we were like, well, that's cool. So I was like, I'm going to dig into that. So we dug into it, and within the next hour, he was telling us about how he witnesses to his employees and all this stuff. He actually had a break, because it was right before Christmas. He had a break in their day to where he ministered to them. He actually stood up. He had like carolers come in front of all the guys. They're all mechanics.
Yeah.
And was talking to them. And then he got up and actually preached to them. And I was like, jaw dropped. It was just like, wow. And so I went up to him. I was like, man, you didn't tell me you were a preacher. I was like, you do all this other stuff. He said, I would rather be a preacher than owning this business. So I used the business to do that. And I said, why didn't you lead? I'm a potential customer for you. Why didn't you lead that with me? And he goes, well, I didn't know where you stand with all that. I said, does that matter? And he was like, no, it shouldn't matter. And so it was one of those cool moments where I didn't expect to get into any of that.
Yeah.
But it was also, I've got a really close person now in Tennessee that every time I go visit in Tennessee, I'm going to go right and see that guy and talk to him and everything else. So, but I think it's a reservation that we all have of, we don't want to Bible thump people. We all feel like, we're going to brimstone and fire type people.
Yeah.
And in all actuality, our employees are begging for it. I mean, we have great employees. We have people that go to church. We have people that don't go to church. We have people that believe in God, that don't believe in God. But I've also seen people that don't believe in God go through our organization, and now they're in church, or they're saved, or whatnot. So, and if you would have told me some of those situations 3 to 4 years ago or 5 years ago when I met these people, that would have changed their life, I'd have been like, there's no way for this guy that would have happened or whatnot.
Right.
And so I think it's really, God loves obedience, right?
Yeah.
I think, did you give me a book with that? Isn't there a book that you gave me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure I've cracked that book yet.
No, because it's in your wife's center console.
That is right. Yeah, because I was going to read it on a trip.
Yeah.
And then I had to drive the whole way because my wife never drives. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't read either. So God really loves obedience and movement. And so That's why he's called us. And so we say all the time, and I know you believe it too, is we're stewards of what God gives us.
Absolutely.
So I don't own owners. God owns owners. And so John Basil believes that too. Everybody that's there, if you ask anybody, they'll be like John says all the time, he's just a steward of what God has given him.
Sure.
And so, and that's with anything. It doesn't matter if you're a business owner or if you go to work at a big company somewhere or you're slinging burgers, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
God's calling you into that mission field to be that person for that organization or for that place. And so the more we do that, the more flourishing and the more your life will be fulfilled when you do that. So it's an important cornerstone of me and my life with the business or any business or anything we go into. But the flesh always comes through to where sometimes you lose that perspective and it becomes a numbers game, or we got to make more money, we got to do this, we got to do that, and it's easy to lose focus on what the vision and what you're supposed to be doing. So,
Like on payroll weeks at Christmas?
Dear God, yes. Yes. Yeah, all my guys say, I could tell when it's payroll week because you don't smile as much.
But this year we're going to stop doing that.
But it's
Cool as a cucumber.
Yeah, we've never not been able to do payroll. We've never not been blessed, not been provided for, or anything like that. And God's provision has come through in multiple times with the business where we've sat there and been like, how's this going to work? And then we get something that works the next day. And so my favorite Bible verse is do not worry in Matthew. And I read it every day, but it doesn't always sink where it should every day.
The cast your cares verse.
Yeah.
I'll even pray like, because the Hebrew is like hurl it as far away from you so you can never pick it up again.
Yeah.
And so my prayer sometimes is, God, like I'm really trying to pick this back up. Please don't let me. Please don't let me because I'm
very
really
lightly
trying.
threw it.
Yeah.
It might have just fallen out of my pocket.
I kind of just dropped it.
Yeah, I kind of dropped it by my foot. Yeah.
No, that's funny. You mentioned the guy you were talking to that's in similar industry with you that had decided to kind of go back to 5 employees and he was happy there. Mm-hmm. And I think that's actually something important to talk about when it comes to growth and pain points is you kind of had a big decision to make in January as you looked at the scope of how things had blown up in a good way, but also in a stressful way. And we talked a lot about Predictable Success, which is now a really well-known book. And
great book.
Yeah, it's a great book and very approachable for your whole team to read.
Yep. And I did read that book.
You did read that book. You read the whole book.
I might have done. No, never mind. I did it on audio. But I listened to that book.
Audible's reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hopefully people like Audible things.
Well,
because we're on a podcast.
We're super big fans of Audible.
If we had to read during this thing, I wouldn't be on it. So
you know what's interesting is yesterday you told me you were a visual learner.
Yeah.
And you're totally not.
Sort of. I guess it depends on the situation.
You're hybrid.
Yeah, I'm a hybrid.
Unicorn.
Yeah. I'm from West Virginia. We're a hybrid. Yeah, that's right.
Should you follow that up with you have all your
That's going to get you more listeners because I said I'm from West Virginia. 100%.
So.
You just got like a whole state following you now.
All 5 of them?
All 5 of my cousins.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but with that, in that book, we talked about Whitewater in January, and you were very much in it. Mm-hmm. So some people choose to go back to fun, like your friend did.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to say whatever decision you make in your business is yours. So if it's,
correct,
I'm going to stay small and I'm going to do these things this way where I can kind of manage it well and just refine it, that's totally fine. But there's a cap on that.
Right. And so the struggle that I had was it wasn't my decision.
Yeah.
It was me getting very intimate with prayer and following what God wanted and struggling and wrestling with that to make those decisions. So a lot of times with that book, if you go back to fun, like you said, there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-mm. It's not like it's I've lost the game. You're just in a different quarter of the game is all it is. But if God's called you to that quarter, it's gonna flourish and there's gonna be some type of growth or blessing that comes out of that. The dangerous part is when we don't put God before the decision of the business and then we do it ourselves in the flesh because you're putting everybody at a detriment that's around you.
Yeah.
Because they're all looking to you to go, what do we do? And how do we do it?
They're just waiting for you to tell them where to go.
Right. And so if you're not including God in those decisions and you're not making sure that he's put first, it's a very dangerous, it actually scares me. Like when I have to make those decisions, if I don't hear anything from God, it scares me when everybody's like, what do we do? What do we do? It's been 2 weeks. Like, what are we doing with this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't really know yet. Like, I don't know what to do yet. And so, but it's also helps to have a great leadership team around you that believes in the same vision and the same, this is our ministry, we put God before everything. Because when God's not speaking to me, he speaks to you.
And that's true.
And he speaks through you to me.
Yeah.
And so it's the same, and it's the iron sharpens iron effect that we talk about. So it's very important to have a great team around you. I'm not anything without anybody around me. I'm just John Kisner, and I'm still just John Kisner. I don't want to sound like prideful or anything. That comes from no place of that. But my dad always preached, if you don't have great people around you, you're not great. And so take care of the people that are around you that do everything every day, and everything will be great. And so that's one thing I really took away from my dad about business and different things like that when it comes to that. But it's been a fun ride. But to be honest with you, when you got involved is when things really started to. It's almost like the scales started coming off, and I think it's because we missed your position. The position that you bring to the company is more. You've got to you keep everything on the rails. I might envision something, but you're like, that's not going to work. Like we need to put brakes on that or whatever.
That's not often.
But when it does happen, I really pay attention to it because I know you have the same vision and the same heart to put God ahead of things, and you don't just make fleshly decisions. So my advice, anybody that's in a executive position or a top leadership position, would be surround yourself with people that are not all like-minded. You definitely shouldn't be like-minded.
No. But
you should have likeness in your faith of how you guys treat things and the hierarchy of how things should be and made and the decisions that should be made.
That's actually a really cool point, because I know when it comes to interviewing and hiring, when you're an entrepreneur, CEO, sometimes you've skipped a couple of steps. Like, it's not like you went up through corporate ranks and they taught you how to interview and what to look for. So finding similarity complex is something people lean into when they're hiring and they haven't had training, because they're like, I see myself in this person.
Right. Yeah.
So you saying that similarity can come from simply the alignment of faith, and then allowing the differences to help each other.
Right.
That's a really cool perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Iron sharpens iron is what we say all the time.
Yeah.
You've said it at least.
We say it all the time.
All the time. Literally all the time. Maybe we should call this iron sharpens iron. Maybe not. But that is a huge motto for me, because I like to surround myself with people that sharpens me. Yeah. And so that's the other thing that you see some type of leadership in other companies or whatnot, people I've met with, you can tell that the CEO is the point person and they make the decisions. They're the end all. This is what it is. This is how we do. And I don't do that at all. I've never done that. Now, there are certain levels that it gets to where it's like everybody's back and forth. I'm just going to make a decision. Absolutely. But for the most part, I confer with everybody on everything. Like finance right now. That's one thing we're going through right now. 100%. And you're like, hey, I can help with that. And I'm like, ew, that's mine. Like, I don't want to. But you know what? You've dealt with it. And you've already had that in past businesses and different things like that. So I need your perspective, and I need Laura's perspective, and I need Stacy's perspective. And if we all come as a combined, we're all going to be equal-minded, and we want the best for the business. That's actually really cool you said that, because I think everybody can think of their thing that they feel the most, I don't want to say insecure, but there's a root there of that, of like, this isn't where I want it to be, but I don't want anyone else to know that it's not structured the way I want. I want to keep tinkering with it myself. That's right. Because I don't want to let other people in. And it tends to be in things that we might even be good at, because we're like, oh, no, I love this and I'm passionate about it. Right. And as a CEO, that can be really hard, because you think about the impact of the team's vision of the company. Right. A lot of people can't let things go either, because they think they have to carry the CEO mentality of, I'm the big dog in the room and I have to carry that. So if I show any vulnerability to any of my team, or, hey, what do you think of this? It shows that maybe I'm not as knowledgeable as everybody holds me to be, right?
I think one thing I've watched you do really well is we work through building process kind of department by department.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first building a department and then building a process for the department.
If there was a camera, you'd see my face like, oh God. Yeah. Because it's almost like going against a cheese grater every day to do that kind of stuff.
So every day there's kind of a different, every week, every month, I feel like there's a different focus area. So it was like, we didn't have a client service department, so then we had to build the department, then we had to build what they do, then we had to build a team around that person and figure out who's going to lead it. That's an example.
Yeah.
You had an office manager, and now you don't.
Right.
Things like just so much change.
Yep.
But in that, I think one thing that's been fun to navigate is once you get through ripping the Band-Aid off of one, like you're like, okay, this one thing, we're going to try it with this one thing.
Yep.
And then you start to figure out who can help you and who you can let in, because that is hard. Somebody listening right now is going, I don't even know who would be my partner in this. Like, I don't know who would, and Basil, who you've mentioned a couple times, has been your partner since the beginning of the business.
Yeah.
And he's still a partner, but you've taken very different roles now that you've structured the company.
Yep.
And he's president over the largest branch.
Yep.
So but he's very good at operations.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reason why me and Basil have gotten along so well is because I'm the visionary and he's the day-to-day.
Yeah.
And I like doing the day-to-day, but I like casting the vision and being able to say in 6 months, this is where we're going to be, and then steer the ship to that route. And so that's the reason why me and Basil's gotten along so well.
Yeah.
Is because we're complete opposites and we both know our traits. It's not like I try to do his, he tries to do mine. And pride never becomes an issue in our relationship.
Yeah.
We're very humble with each other. He still calls me on operation things, and I still run everything by him with visionary type stuff to see what he says. And the first thing I say is, don't just say yes. I need to know exactly what you think of this. Like, tell me, like Pastor Sean says, do I not look good in biker shorts type thing? That type of thing. So I need you to be honest with me. So, but I think to be a great business leader, you need a partner. I think it makes business a lot easier when you have a partner. And a lot of people can't do that. They can't partner with somebody else. And a lot of those people will hit a ceiling because they only have so much skill set to get to that next point, and then they can't get past that next barrier. And so that's where Basil's helped me, is because Basil does the day-to-day to free me up to do what I do, which takes us to the next thing. And so that's been a huge blessing that we didn't even realize that was a thing the first 2 or 3 years with us. We just worked together. He did his thing. I did my thing. And now that we're coming into the season that we're in with the multiple businesses and everything, we both are like, wow, like we've done that all along, but we never recognized it or ever actually paid attention to it. So,
how did you decide when it was time to start defining those roles? Because it does start organically. You're figuring out what everybody's good at with a startup.
It was really in the past year and a half to 2 years is when we really started doing that. And we had to define the roles because, to be honest with you, everybody was yelling at us to define roles. It was that simple. It wasn't like I was sitting there and something, a shooting star went by and I was like, I need to define roles in the company. It was everybody in the company was like, there is so much gray area of who we go to and how we do things and how we deal with stuff that we need to define things.
Sure.
And so that was one of the things when you first came in, you're like, we need an org chart. And I'm like, what? I know what an org chart is, but how is that even going to solve my problems? Like, that's not going to solve anything. And it was just because I had never been to that level of having to organize a business.
Yeah.
We went through the fun stage where me and John are out. We're putting in pool pumps. We're talking to our manager and the renovation side, and he's like, yeah, we're doing this today, and we just got this to do. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, everybody's doing something, and they should know their role.
Yeah.
Like, that should be it. Like, it's as simple
Good
as
times.
that. Yeah. And then it gets to the point where you do create the departments, and you got 2 or 3 people in that department, and then they go, well, if I have to talk to finance, how do I do that? And how do I? So it's almost like we gave them the translation tool to be able to do that. But it was the real defining moment was going to meeting after meeting after meeting, going, well, what do I do with this? What do I do with that? Who do I talk to with this? Who do I talk to with that? And so what we started doing was in those meetings, we would start taking notes, which is super important. If you're listening right now and you don't take an iPad or a notebook into every meeting you do and you pay attention and review those notes after the meeting, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
And so I'm the type of person that I used to have a notebook, and I had a notebook for every business we had. But by doing that, I was able to keep track of things because there's so many things going on and there's so many people coming to talk to you and ask you questions that I'll forget what we talked about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And so now we have it all electronic to where I can do it anywhere. Like I can even check any meetings that go on today. I can literally log into our software and look at the meeting notes that somebody else took without even calling them. So I can not bother people, but I can also direct the ship just by reading those things. So by doing that, every meeting we went into, it was to the point where everybody was complaining about that. So that's really where we came to the realization that we need to write this stuff down. That's a pain point. Let's deal with it this week. Let's put a date on it, and let's get it done, and let's define that role. And we did that, and it wasn't, hey, in 2 weeks we got everybody's roles done. It was like a year and a half.
It's months.
And I
months.
still feel like there's still roles that need to be defined.
Yeah.
And no matter what level of business you're at, every day there's always a pain point. And I've learned that any pain point you write down and you put it on a to-do list. And because you don't want to hear about it again. It costs money by hearing about it numerous times. You really want to just get past it. And what that also did was it clarified the roles for our employees, and they were able to be more beneficial for them and their direct reports. And it took stress off of them.
Absolutely.
And that's where I saw the company. It took, like I said, a year and a half. But through that year and a half, like you were saying, you could see a department get built. And then that department would be like, oh, you could just see a breath of fresh air and peace come over them. And then you move to the next part. And so we're always doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now, your team, so I think where you are that we just dealt with this morning is your team is now starting to see where a process is missing.
Yeah.
And they're starting to take initiative on that.
Yep.
Now, as a CEO, typically you're a personality that likes to lead those things. So
Are you digging at something right now? Because you're smiling a lot. Like you're,
no, I'm
like
just thinking about this morning.
You're trying to put me in a corner real quick?
No.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
You're far from an infant.
I act like an infant. Yeah.
Accurate.
Yeah.
But just this morning, there was someone on the team recognized like a gap in a process for something new that is starting to gain traction in sales.
Yeah.
So they called a meeting with a bunch of people, and it's a good thing. It's something that we had talked about but
Right.
not moved on. But their gut reaction can be, I should have done that, and they've overstepped.
Right.
When really they're starting to get it
Yeah.
and take initiative on the process. I even struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like, did I miss a step? Should I have done
I
that?
do too, but
Yeah.
let's not tell anybody that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're telling people now.
Oh, crap. Yeah.
So
Forgot what we're on.
how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? When your team starts to get it, we should celebrate. But there's this like...
Yeah, I mean, the first reaction that you get when you create the process is, I always call it, we're the plow, right?
Yeah.
And the field doesn't like to be plowed.
No.
And that's a big problem. So change and everything else, people hate it.
Well, because there's no accountability once you start doing those things.
Right. And then so it's like what you say, I see you. It's like when you go into a market or whatever and they have a greeter.
Yeah.
The shoplifting goes down when they have a greeter because I see you.
Yeah.
And now you've been noticed. So now you probably won't be more than likely to steal or whatever. So it's the same thing with our people. We notice them, and then they get that uncomfortable feeling of like, okay, they're watching.
They're digging into my stuff.
But then once they get the concept of what that is, they realize it doesn't just protect the company, it protects them.
Yeah.
And that's super important to be able to convey that to the employee and to drive that home for them of this isn't just so I can come in here and yell whenever you make a mistake if that happens. This is so you can cover your butt. So if I do come in here and say something or somebody else comes in here and says something, you're like, this is what I am and this is where I work and this is what I'm responsible for. You must be talking about Joe next door. You need to go talk to them or whatever.
That's funny you say that because I think what you just said about conveying it is just as important as knowing, like once you structure. Because when we had a rollout about productivity with one of the teams, on the back end, you're in an executive meeting and you're going, these are our slowest people and they're costing us a ton of money. And what are we going to do about it?
Right.
But then when you go talk to the team, it's, this is our top performer.
Yeah.
And the clients are really happy with him.
Yeah.
But also his productivity is through the roof. So you've got to, we're always going to be on the back end, kind of focused on where the pain points are and
Right.
eliminating cost and dealing with poor performers. But on the front end, it's look how we get to celebrate you
Right.
because we're measuring this now.
Before you came in, I didn't do that well.
Oh.
And the only reason why I do that well now is because you force me at times to do that. And that's a good thing because that's the iron sharpens iron
Look
thing.
at that.
There we go.
Look at that.
And so I always, everybody comes in, they're like, why are you heavy burdened today? Or what's going on? Or what's this or that? And I'm like, there's just a lot going on. But I always see the problems. It's like a minister, a
Yeah.
pastor, or a doctor.
Yeah.
Any of those trades,
Or diagnosers.
You're always going to see the bad.
Yeah.
And constantly it's bad, 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 bad. But then the doctor gets to see him walk out of the hospital. Or the doctor or the minister gets to see somebody get saved and then save somebody else. It's like, I see it. But in the day-to-day operations, it's the bad part.
Yeah.
And that's what God's called us to. And that's the position that he's called us to. So it's a heavy burden, but it's also something that we're called to be able to do, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.